As we start to leave World War II and head toward the Cold War, one of the most famous people on the planet is the subject of today's Friday story. So happy Friday to you. See if you can figure out who this is about. It's called The Good for Nothing. When you're a little boy and dad calls you good for nothing, it's gotta hurt. That's just what Giuseppe's papa called him. Good for nothing. Little Giuseppe, good for nothing. And he wasn't joking. For Papa came from a family of fishermen. 300 years, the men in his family had been fishermen in Sicily, and Papa himself was a fisherman. When he first came to America, he worked on the railroad until he saved enough money to send for his wife. Then he headed straight for San Francisco to Fisherman's Wharf to become a fisherman again, to perpetuate the family tradition. Eventually, Papa and Mama had 9 children, and you can imagine that all the boys got their sea legs early. Began helping Papa out on the fishing boat from the time they could learn to walk. All of them, that is, except Giuseppe. Giuseppe didn't want to. "What do you mean you don't want to?" demanded Papa. Giuseppe explained that the rocking of the small boat and the smell of the fish made him sick. It wasn't that he didn't want to help out. Fish just didn't agree with him, that's all. Well, that wasn't good enough for Papa. As far as Papa was concerned, Giuseppe was good for nothing. The boy had come from a long line of fishermen, and there was no reason in the world for the profession to disagree with him. Giuseppe was never too sick to go out and play with his friends. Why then did it make him sick to help his papa? Not why, but what happened then is the rest of our story. Disturbed by his father's criticism, young Giuseppe tried very hard to adapt to the family business. The rocking of the boat and the smell of the fish still bothered him, so he turned to other tasks, such as sealing the boat and repairing the nets. But as hard as he'd tried to remain unaffected, that fish smell was still in the gear and made his already sensitive stomach even more queasy. Giuseppe quit. He went out and odd jobbed wherever he could, errand boy, newspaper boy. Sometimes he even pulled down $1 a day. It wasn't pocket money, it was table money. Every cent Giuseppe earned, he turned over to the household for food and clothing. You'd think Papa would be proud of his son, but to Papa, young Giuseppe was just being lazy. Odd jobs were lazy jobs, according to him. Real work was helping Papa on the fishing boat. This weighed pretty heavily on the lad. He started hiding under the bed when Papa came looking for him, or he ran off to play sports with his friends when he knew Papa was about to call him to the fishing boat. Tennis was especially interesting to him. Watching the older boys play, he knew the tennis champs, like McLaughlin and Johnston, had come from San Francisco, and he wanted to be just like them. But the tennis passion didn't last long, and for the first time, Giuseppe began to believe his dad. Perhaps he was a lazy good-for-nothing, who couldn't even stay interested in a sport. Maybe he never would amount to anything. That's the way Giuseppe saw it back then. Everything just seemed sort of gloomy and helpless. But as it turned out, Giuseppe one day became the most successful member of his family. Oh, he didn't go back to fishing. Despite his ancestry, Giuseppe just wasn't cut out to be a fisherman, or a tennis player for that matter. When Giuseppe finally found something that interested him sufficiently to stick with it, his passion for it was so great that 2 of his brothers quit fishing and joined him. You've heard of Giuseppe by his American first name. Everyone else has, I guess, and that great big world beyond Fisherman's Wharf won't forget the fishermen they lost. Neither will they forget the boy who forgot about tennis, only to enter the world of sports and turn it upside down. For if that young man hadn't been too seasick to join the family business, he would have left a vacancy in baseball's Hall of Fame too great to fill. He was the famous Yankee, Giuseppe Joe DiMaggio, and that's the rest of the story. Have a good day, everyone.